In order to make a living as a courier, a plagat used to say to the youngsters applying in the ranks, two things are needed, a head of gold and an ass of steel. A head of gold is indispensable, taught a plagat, since inside of the leather sack under his clothes, the courier keeps only messages of low importance, the kind that can be fearlessly and entrusted to the treacherous paper. The truly important secret messages, the kind that matter a lot, the courier must memorize and tell the one whom they are intended for. Word by word, and sometimes these are not simple words. Word by word, and sometimes these are not simple words. Hard to pronounce, much less memorize. In order to remember and make no mistake in repeating, one needs truly a head of gold. As for an ass of steel, well, that every courier will find out by himself. After having spent 3 days and nights in the saddle and having run for hundred or even 200 miles on rocky roads, sure, one does not sit in the saddle all day long. One dismounts sometimes to rest. The human can withdraw much, but the horse cannot. But when time comes to go back in the saddle, the rear sometimes yells, God no. The rear sometimes yells, God no. But who needs couriers nowadays, Master Plagat asked the youngsters. From Wengerberg to Vizima, for example, one cannot pass the distance in less than 4 or 5 days, even on the fastest mount. And how much does a wizard in Wengerberg need to pass the message to wizard in Vizima? Half an hour at most. Courier's horse might go limp. Robbers or squirrels might shoot him. Wolves or griffins might rip him apart. 1 minute there is a courier, next he's gone. While a magic message will reach destination point for sure. Won't lose. While a magic message will reach destination point for sure, won't lose the way, be late or become lost. Who needs couriers with wizards everywhere, close to every castle? Couriers are not needed anymore, Master Plagat. For some time, a Plagat also thought that that he was not needed by anybody anymore. He was 36, short but strong and sinewy. Hard work didn't scare him. And he had naturally a head of gold. He would find another job to feed himself and his wife, save some money for his two unwed and unwed as of yet daughters, Dory and Kip, helping the one who was wed already, but whose dim-witted husband had no luck in business. But a Plagat didn't want to and couldn't imagine himself doing anything else. He was the royal messenger. And suddenly, after a long and painful period of obscurity and inactivity, a Plagat became needed once more. The hooves thundered on the roads once again. The couriers, like during good old days again, started crossing the country, carrying messages from one settlement to another. A Plagat knew why it was so. He saw a lot of and heard even more. he saw a lot and heard even more. He was expected to wipe the past message from his mind immediately so as not to be reminded of it even during torture. But a plague didn't remember. But a plague did remember and understood why kings suddenly stopped communicating with each other by use of magic and help from wizards. The messages carried by couriers were supposed to be kept secret from the magicians. The kings lost trust in the wizards, stopped sharing with them their secrets. That was the cause of this sudden cooling in relations between what was the cause of this sudden cooling in relations between kings and wizards. A plague didn't know and didn't care. Both were, in his opinion, uh, inconceivable creatures whose moves were incomprehensible, particularly now in such difficult times, and the fact that difficult times were approaching was hard to miss while the land from traveling the land from one city to another, one castle to another, one kingdom to another. There were loads of soldiers on the road. Each new step brought new rows of infantry or riders, and each new commander was angry, alarmed, harsh, and so sure of his own importance as if late of the entire world dependent on him alone. Also, settlements and castles were full of armed crowds, hustle and bustle day and night. The usually unseen counts and uh, castellans, counts and castellans were marching relentlessly on the walls and courtyards, angry like wasps before the storm. They yelled, swore, gave orders, and kicks. In other words, the threat of war hung over them in the air. A plague rose and looked around. Downhill was a river. A plague rose and looked around. Downhill was a river, and behind it behind it were forests. The courier rushed his horse. Time was pressing on. He was on his way for the past 2 days. King's orders and letters found him in Hague, where he was resting after his return from Tretogor. He left the castle at night, galloping along the left bank of the Pontar. He crossed the border of Temeria before dawn, and now, at noon of the following day, he was already near the bank of Ismena. Had King Foltest stayed at Vizima, a plague would have handed him the message just this night. Unfortunately, the king was not in the capital. He stayed in the southern part of his country, in Maribor, 200 miles away from Vizima. A plague knew this, which is why, in the vicinity of the White Bridge, he left the main west leading road in favor of forest paths in the direction of Elander. It was a bit risky. The squirrels still prowled the forests, and pitiful was the lot of one who fell into their arms or found himself in the range of their bows. but the royal messenger must take risks. Such is his work.